as a chief learning officer, right, is like, how do you um what do you usually consult like leaders, let's say in more um customer facing orgs, which is, like a support function, HR function, an IT function, right? They're, facing, a certain persona. Like, how do you see, probably the learning plans have been totally, L&D plans, have been totally, like people are like, what should we do now? Like, what is the biggest change that you've seen?
Yeah. So I think this goes back to something I would say is we fundamentally misunderstand work. And we don't often know what actually goes into things. Now, I think we've described a few things here where, we kind of can, on the big buckets, understand like these things are happening in these jobs. People are in general doing this stuff. I think what's been interesting from my seat is watching how little we actually know the skills and behaviors that go into doing those things really well.
Hmm.
And so what's happened is all this change has come in, all of a sudden people are going, okay, so even in our example, so let's say customer service starts to move into this kind of higher order problem solver, putting people, what actually makes somebody good at that?
Hmm.
Because we really have never had to unpack that before. It was just kind of like, well, you just put a person that has experience in customer service. We don't really know what they do, but we know that that's how it goes. Where now we actually have to deconstruct that and say, what actually makes somebody really good at that kind of problem solving and those interpersonal relationships? And how do we define those things? And then how do, like for Andre, how do we actually create a path to say, you're really good at this, but to be successful in this next future, these are the kind of decisions you're going to have to make, or these are the kind of
So it's
relationships
similar.
you're going to have to
Okay,
build.
so I see what you're saying. Okay, let's think about the NBA real quick. Before in the NBA, if you think about, if you think about the video game NBA, if anyone played it, in the past, you had like, LeBron James, right? And then there was passing, shooting, speed, stamina, and stuff like that. And, in
Yep.
this new NBA world, to be successful, the three-pointers is way more important, right? And maybe like the technique, the shooting technique, because it's longer range, is way more important than, let's say, defensiveness and like, being strong, right? So it's been a
Yep.
change in the game of basketball probably over the last, Steph Curry was the person probably that introduced that
Yeah.
change. So you need to kind of understand what are the different spikes, if you think about a spider web, that you can have as an athlete. And in the same case, you're an athlete at work, to some
Yeah.
extent. And so how can we understand which of those we should?
Well, and I think going back to that example, it's a great one because even let's say, and I think this is where we maybe just stopped before, we would say stamina, speed, strength, 3-point shooting ability. And we're
Mhm.
like, I don't know, so one, there was the weights and measures on that of, well, we were discovering we need more in the 3-point shooting than we did over here before. So some of it is that weights and measures. Some of it then is going, okay, 3-point shooting, what actually makes you a good 3-point shooter? Do we
Yeah,
really know?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because maybe we don't. Maybe we just go, well, you've sunk a lot of them, but do we really understand the mechanics of what kind of exercises does someone do to get
Mm,
better at shooting 3-point? What kind of defensive positioning do they need to know to be able to put themselves in a place to take more 3-point shots? How do we change the team dynamics to actually
mm,
optimize more 3-point shooting than we used to, where, getting in and dunking it might have been more? That kind of complex architecture, we have not ever had to deconstruct knowledge work, especially down to that level. Now, we did in manufacturing and some of those types of jobs because was robotics came in, we had to really understand this stuff. But now we're doing this in a space that historically we just kind of went, you know how to shoot a 3-pointer.
mm.
But now we realize actually we don't know what goes into the mechanics of that. And we need to take the time to deeply understand that so that we also can go, what part of shooting a 3-pointer can AI do? Because it's fine for it to do it. And
Mm.
what part of shooting a 3-pointer do we not want AI doing? Because if it does it, it's going to make things exponentially worse.
Mm. No, I like that. I like that. It's actually, the level deeper, right? And understanding. And this is where maybe like this operations, this high level piece comes in, in order to understand, what why a certain response. Let's think about just like, customer support or IT support. There's certain responses that are good to customers and employees, others that are not. Why is that? Is it the character length? Is it the paragraphs? Is it the use of an emoji? Is it the tone? Is it like what makes things good and not good? And once we know what
Yep.
good means, right? In this like kind of, basically you have a spider web, you go into one and then you create another spider web, you know,
Yes.
within that skill. Once we understand this, like how can we then optimize for it? I like that. I like that a bit.